Welcome, one and all, to another edition of Run the Broccoli. Apparently, Run the Block, brought to you by the Live Rich Project. There is no outtakes here, folks, so all the slurred words you got to deal with. We have an action-packed show today. We're going to talk a little bit about some questions that we got dropped earlier this week. We're going to talk about content. Facebook and Instagram have just announced what appears to be contradictory takes on how they're going to move forward and why it's going to affect entrepreneurs and coaches that try to use either platform for engagement and for clients or services. Also, we want to kind of understand the role of friends and why that may be one of the biggest opportunities for businesses to grow, especially in the workplace. And I believe we have some other interesting takes on content from our good friend Neil Patel. Is that right, Michael?
Yeah, that's correct. We'll dive into some data around content creators and marketers and, maybe some mistakes that we're collectively making where we're biting off a little bit more than we can chew. We should probably simplify first and expand. So we'll dive into that as well. Yeah.
A couple of questions to also give you a preview there. We had one question about the new tiered system that could possibly be coming to Instagram for businesses, good, bad, the ugly, and also lead nurture, the who, what, when, why, how should you go about it. But first, did you see the Prime story for the Logan Paul affiliated? Is it KSI? KSI?
It's
KPI?
Yeah.
KSI. Yeah, their
KSI.
drink Prime, which took the world by storm. And by the world, I mean 12 to 22-year-olds, I think, that when it was first released, were paying $20 and more for a bottle for whatever reason, for expensive Gatorade. Now is under scrutiny and a pending lawsuit. Allegedly, this drink is marketed primarily to teens and is accused of false advertising and forever chemicals. I saw one report say up to 3 times the allowed amount in their drinks. Have you seen anything on this, Michael?
Yeah, I think we probably saw a snapshot of the same thing or the same article. It looks like Prime, the official drink of broccoli-headed teenagers with round back deadlifts everywhere, is actually just literally poison. Who knew the amount of chemicals that that drink pumps through your body is triple the amount that is actually allowed into any product on shelves. And unfortunately, this is too commonplace in the United States. I'm sure you've seen plenty of they're not memes, they're just comparison charts at this point where they show like a bag of Skittles in Great Britain and it's got like 6 ingredients, and then the bag of Skittles in the United States and it's got like 56 ingredients. And so it's going to be interesting because this is garnering a lot of attention. It's going to be interesting to see if anything comes from this upstream, right? Up at the FDA. It'll be interesting to see if anything changes there, but unfortunately, I don't think it's going to.
I also saw where allegedly they claim on the bottle there's, I think it's 140 or 120 milligrams of caffeine per bottle, and it's actually they're testing possibly over 200 milligrams. Which again, if this is targeted to kids, the article went on to say the doctor recommended was like less than 100 milligram for kids. Although I don't think kids need caffeine at all, let alone pounding primes 2 and 3 of these, thinking it's a Gatorade, and you're doing it after a hard practice. Like I can't imagine that combined with forever chemicals just sounds like the Red Bull, the in college everyone goes for Red Bull vodkas, right? Or like Red Bull and Jaeger. It sounds like that's where we're at here. Instead, it's just the 12 to 17-year-olds version of that terrible concoction that nobody should have.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest, man. This is not the first time we've heard of shenanigans from these two, and these two, I mean Logan Paul and KSI. Didn't they also fleece a ton of their followers out of millions of dollars from an NFT scheme probably about a year ago or a little bit more at this point?
Yeah, that's right.
I think there's a lesson when you have people and their main objective is attention, the things that they're willing to do to get that attention, and then, the second step is obviously to monetize it. If your priority is getting someone's eyes on you and taking their money, your priority is not delivering the best possible thing to them. And here is a perfect example, right? What do? We leverage some hype beast influencers. We pump out a cheap chemical product that will actually poison your audience, and that's all they care about. It's a sad
100%. It is. And, at the moment, we can't fault them. We don't know how much they knew about it, right? Were they just trying to cut costs and hired the cheapest companies? Didn't know. They thought they had agreed to a certain thing, and then instead the company was actually doing something else. We don't know what that looks like. But anyone that's listening to this, that's interested in collaborations or partnerships, JVs, any of those things, starting a business and even just outsourcing the shipment when you don't control all the ins and outs. I mean, this happens in the supplement industry all the time, right? You create a powder concoction and you've wanted certain things in there, and then it goes to get tested and there's a bunch of other things in there, right? So I think anyone who's listening to this, if you're partnering with people or companies or trying to establish, a business that has outsourced parts and components, you've got to do testing and you have to actually understand that whole process if you actually want a good product and not to harm your users, and you're trying to actually provide quality to the world. If you're not, then, maybe they did know everything and they didn't care. I'm going to hope that they didn't know, and this is like a terrible, terrible thing that they were, using the cheapest of plastics. Because, I mean, even if you drink like Deer Park water is one of the worst waters you could possibly drink in a bottle. The amount of plastic that's in that water that you consume is terrible. It leaches the whole time. So even something like that, like same thing. So maybe they're using plastic that's similar, and they didn't do a bunch of QA, right? Quality control. So hopefully their quality assurance and quality control is improved, and this was just a drastic, terrible, terrible mishap. I want to hope that humanity is better than that. And along the same lines, did you see The Rock? Did you see The Rock is getting a bunch of backlash for something sort of similar, just not the same?
No, I did not. This is news to me. What do you got?
Yeah, so The Rock posted recently a collaboration with In-N-Out. And he goes through the drive-through and he's like, hey, this is my first time at In-N-Out. And then somebody quickly went to an old post that he had from 2022, which was almost the exact same post, like, hey, first time going to In-N-Out. And so people are calling him basically a sellout now, that all of his content now is based around promotions or future promos, and nothing's authentic. And they also like went on, a giant rant about he destroyed the DC universe. And like they just piled everything together. There was people complaining about WWE, saying like he stepped and came back in for no reason other than his own glory. They were mad about his promotions because of his branding with Terramana, which is his own tequila, and his $7 studio, which is something that he produces. And then they even went down the rabbit hole of, Oprah and Hawaii and the fires. And so like they just lumped everything. Like it was like an X coming back at you for everything that they weren't 100% on board with. It just unleashed. And the article was talking about how many followers he was losing or something like that. And I doubt he honestly cares how many followers he's losing. He's got so much money. He probably doesn't care. But it's just one of those things that it goes back to this. What are your collaborations? Like, what do you want to be known for? I feel like that's a mismatch when The Rock goes to In-N-Out. Like, he's known for his quote unquote cheat meals. They're not really cheat meals though, right? Like he has pancakes and sushi. Like for most of the world, that's like the healthiest meal they'll ever eat. For The Rock, it was a cheat meal because he was, jacking up his carbohydrates after a heavy lifting day, right? So was it really a cheat meal? No. But then if you go off brand with something like In-N-Out, people start to then wonder, right? Like if you're supposed to be like one of the fittest dudes in the world, not saying that you can't have, a gluttonous meal every now and then, but if you're trying to actually do like a partnership or a sponsorship from something like that, people start to wonder where, your loyalties really are.
Yeah, man. There's number one, I'm going to echo back to what I said. This is the same situation, right? When we have a larger than life personality and the interest is on attention and monetizing that. We're going to put the interest of profit over the interest of anything else at that point, right? So there's one aspect of this. The other aspect is one that you've spoken to, and this is a lesson for anyone out there listening, because we're talking about partnerships. Now, when you have someone like The Rock, who is high status as he is, who is working with the high level companies and collaborators that he is, he's having conversations with people who probably aren't in the marketing department, right? Like, that's not who he talks to. He very well could have final say over the marketing, but I highly doubt it, because we've also now heard, hey, by the way, not only are these people mad at you, but the people in every other lane and avenue that you went into, that you partnered with, that you had those conversations, that we can guarantee, that we can't guarantee, but we can say probably weren't with the marketing department. If we want to understand another version of that, Bud Light, right? The people way up top probably weren't the people who hired the marketing department that put Dylan Mulvaney on there, that caused them to lose everything.
Great. Now we're shadow banned. You had to say it, didn't you? Gosh.
Edit that out. AI, do your thing. Get rid of it. But it's very similar, right? And so for those listening out there, and we encourage people to form partnerships. We collectively, this is what we teach. Why would you just want to build a business online when you can also collaborate with others? You should, but you should heavily vet them. You have to do your due diligence. Do you want to partner with someone who doesn't share the same philosophies as you? Do you want to partner with someone who's going to put you out there in a light that's contradictory to the messaging with your audience, right? Because while you're trying to grow your audience and their brand loyalty, so are all of these other entities that we're going to collaborate with. And so typically we have what we would like, this is your brand. It's on brand for this person, right? And so you're talking about cheat meals being on brand for The Rock, even though they're not real cheat meals, right? And he went off brand. He went off brand for someone else's audience, and it caused a backlash in his. And so that's something that you have to weigh out when you're forming these partnerships is, are these people going to put you in the same light that you want to be presented in to your own audience? Because if the answer is no, you're going to cause a lot of problems when you come back home.
Yeah, I think the word that keeps coming to mind here is a word that you and I have trouble with sometimes, which is authenticity. Not because we're not trying to be authentic, but typically, when we've been around people that are trying to use that word, it's because they're trying to say another way of they're trying to figure out a way not to always lie.
Real people use real words. If you want to be authentic, be real.
Yeah, just say what you're going to say. If you start off a sentence with "I'm trying to be authentic here," I'm
what are you doing the rest skeptical. Of the time?
Yeah.
Can I be honest with you? Are you lying to me the rest of the time?
Yeah, maybe. All right, let's move on. Report shows publisher referrals from Facebook have declined by 50%. Now, stick with me here. I know that can be a mouthful, and you're like, what are you talking about? What does this have to do with entrepreneurs or coaches? So I'm going to tell you. This is in collaboration with a report from the Press Gazette. And this is essentially talking about Meta and their shift away from news content. Essentially, with political season upon us, it's been a couple months. But with all the posts that typically come around this time and ads, your feed just gets lined with news articles that are spun in a certain way that typically end up in some sort of political spectrum. Facebook and Meta in general has announced they're trying to get away from that because they say, quote unquote, they have heard us. They have heard the user's experience and how poor it is when all they see, is disastrous negative attack ads. So this is quoted from the Gazette. Aggregate Facebook traffic to news and media sites that have been tracked by Chartbeat since 2018 shows that referrals to the sites have plunged by 58% in the last 6 years, from 1.3 billion to 561 million this last month. Traffic from Facebook fell by 50% in the last 12 months alone, as the decline shows a little sign of slowing. The data also suggests, in terms of total referrals, Facebook now drives less than a quarter of the visits than it had back in 2018, down 30% in March of 2018 to 7% in March of 2024. Now, where this gets interesting is because This article goes on to say that Meta has been gradually reducing the presence of news content in its apps, with the company ending its Facebook News project, which had been its primary support stream for news publishers up through December of last year. More recently, Meta announced that it was looking to reduce the reach of political content in its apps, again, to facilitate a more positive user experience. The big one comes, though, the gradual shift towards AI recommended updates, primarily video clips and user feeds, has enabled Meta to reduce its reliance on new posts. That, in part, is because it's no longer, hear me out, it is no longer looking to focus on user engagement, i.e., comments and likes, as the driver of content reach, with time spent now playing a bigger role in dictating what algorithms seek to highlight and show more people. Do we just stop there and just let that like replay like an EDM loop, or like what do we do?
Well, I guess we have to dive in.
My initial thoughts here are several things. We can't stop progress. You can't stop innovation. AI's here. There's already a lot in the background. I believe Meta's is called Llama. I think they're on version 3 now. Lots of things you can do with it. ChatGPT just rolled out more AI that, is a spinoff of version 4, which you can talk to, and it picks up on verbal cues as well as facial cues, body language, which is just freaky. I see that being disastrous for people who already consider themselves introverts. So without going into those rabbit holes, because we should probably just do like a whole episode on like algorithms and AI and kind of like where that's at. For the end user here, that's entrepreneur, coach, something along those lines, or trying to start a business or collaborate with businesses. Meta, and we're gonna be a little contrary on the next article that we send you, but this is Facebook specific for now. They're getting away from news articles, which is great, right? They're trying to promote more people posting, or at least more things that look like people are posting. But like on the back half of that article, it goes right into AI generated. So initially I'm like, okay, maybe it just means like the quote unquote algorithms, just all AI now. And so they're just serving you up more home runs, essentially. So you just, go through your 60-second videos and you're just scrolling. Because you and I have covered before that, we don't see the average person now commenting or liking it at all, especially on Instagram, things like that. You go through the Reels rabbit hole and you just start scrolling, right? You watch a 60-second clip. Maybe you go and like click on the person's profile. Maybe you decide to follow them or not, but you're not liking their videos. You're not commenting for sure, because nobody wants to comment and then get commented back, and then just chaos ensues. If it's funny or it's informational, you may send Reels. I send you Reels all the time that are like around business or marketing or ads. I'm like, hey, this is a really cool ad. And so I think you have all those things going in together. What scares me though is when it says AI, and I know what they're building with Llama, does that mean they're just going to create AI content that they think you will enjoy? So it may or may not be factual, but it's just like, this person likes baseball, so we're just going to compile a bunch of baseball clips, and then eventually it'll just be like, AI generated baseball clips that we think you'll enjoy that aren't actually even real.
Slippery slope. I think that's what we're looking at. The really interesting part is where does this go, right? We're kind of dancing around it now, but the principled thing is this. They said, hey, we're not even going to focus on engagement anymore. So what does that mean, right? Because that's a great way to typically have some sort of a metric for how effective your content is, right? We can't necessarily say it's the quality of the content, because that's subjective, but how effective it is, we can typically get that through the metrics and the data that they feed back to us, which is all based on engagement. And so my question now is, if they're not going to focus on engagement and you make engaging content, what are they going to do with that? Does that just fall by the wayside? Does that still get some sort of a bump Because if not, then yeah, what you said is the distinct possibility where we will be at the mercy of the AI that they are leveraging within the system, top down, that will be designed to keep you transfixed on just watching and not doing anything else, right? And you touched on it, and so we should probably explore it a little bit. This is for all the coaches out there. This has happened to myself. It's happened to Cameron. It's happened to just about every coach that we've coached in the last several years. But one of the conversations that we have frequently is because in coaching, and Cam covered this last week, 5 ways you can get a lead. And the most obvious and effective way is organic on social, right? That's how a majority of people get their clients. And so if you're going to get a majority of your clients on social media, but now there's no longer engagement, what are we going to do next? Because that's where this goes, right? The things that are working on, by example, the things that you see on LinkedIn and Twitter now are things that got play on Facebook like 5 or 6 years ago, starting. And all of that, the cycle ran through first there, and then it ran through on Instagram, and now it's made its way to LinkedIn and Twitter. So we're going to get a hard timeline reset from Meta. The only question is, what can we do moving forward to ensure that we're going to get some engagement? And the answer is pay to play.
Yeah, I think what bums me out is I wish Instagram was still its own thing. I wish they never sold out to Facebook, because they're two different platforms in my head. If Meta is going to go down this rabbit hole and they want to just throw up AI generated things, that's fine. The platform, I think most people that probably listen to this and that we use is going to be Instagram first and foremost, and also like Twitter, right? And then possibly YouTube. Most people don't get on Facebook unless you have a group, which is where this has to go. Like, you're either going to have to figure out how to pull people off of social and use platforms like Circle, Mighty Networks, something that you control, even if it's like Telegram, or, I mean, I know it's Facebook owned WhatsApp, but like places where you control the conversation and what people see and don't see. Possibly eventually things like apps. I think, once the price gets down to maybe a couple thousand, most places that will like white label an app for you are several thousand versus just like 500 to 1,000 that are good, and user interface I should say, is good, and it's not cumbersome, and it's very easy to navigate for your clients or whatever your community's for. Discord may be free, but there's obviously a huge learning curve for most people. I think communities are going to matter more than ever. The more we go to this AI generated thing, I think you're going to have factions of people that, one, don't like all of this. And so there's either new platforms that are going to pop up, like Rumble's a great example. Obviously that's around speech and, shadow banning and things like that. But it's going to probably go into the quote unquote network phase, which if you look at TV, satellite TV, anything like that, right, there was like 5 main networks. And then over the course of a couple decades, you had hundreds of channels, each one serving a specific purpose. And then eventually that declined for something new, right? And so I think that this is kind of where this may go. You have the big guys, you have Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, you have TikTok, which may or may not be banned, you have Twitter up and coming, you have YouTube, right? But then you have other places like Truth Social, you have Rumble, Discord, Reddit's kind of, even, it was already big, but now it's growing even more. You have Locals, yeah, you have Substack. You have all these like branches that are like finding their niche and just exploding, right? Even newsletters coming back in, things like Beehive. Over the last probably 2 years, that's just something that was just kind of, if you'd have asked me what was going to take off, I never would have been like, yeah, newsletters are going to become a really big thing again. But it's cool, right? Because it leads you to other places. So I think once you see the pushback, once these bigger companies, I think, go into AI, I think you'll start to see more things fracture off. And then these factions will pop up where people want to either see something else or be more a part of the conversation. Because eventually it's probably, I would imagine, if you're serving up AI generated content, you're probably also having AI bots, which no one will know that at first, and then it'll become the thing, right? So I imagine people eventually will figure that out and be like, I don't want to be a part of that. I actually want to like talk to other humans.
The simulation flips. That's how I like to think of it. We go in a direction with one thing, and then eventually the pendulum swings back the other way, and it's typically a complete 180. I'm gonna go with what I said earlier: run the block, right? Like, as the tech companies are getting more sophisticated with how they're going to do things, the more connected we are in the virtual world, the more we have a desire for actual, authentic, real connection with another person face to face. We desire novelty, right? Like, and this is some Tony Robbins six core human drivers and desires: certainty, uncertainty, things like that. And so uncertainty being novelty. We need something new, right? Like, social media is proof of that. It's why we get addicted, because it's something new for your brain all the time. And so this is why the industry frequently flips, because, for the past few years, everyone's like, run a challenge, run a scholarship. And then it was, you need a link tree that drives applications. And now it's, you need a business where you're not sending DMs. You need it's always the opposite thing. And so I'm going to encourage people to diversify the way that you think about growing a business. I think that everything that Cameron said is spot on, especially the part where community being extremely important. But this is also what everyone's tried to do over the last couple of years online, is to build communities, right? We see community software popping up overnight everywhere. You're 100% right about the app being the next thing. It's not super cost effective yet for a lot of people. You're looking at about a $2,000 upfront investment, and then anywhere from $100 to $500 a month to stay on the platform after that. And so a lot of people aren't quite there yet. And so for those of you who are just starting and you don't have the money to invest in your own app or outsource a lot of your projects, start running the block. Start trying to partner with people local in your area. Start trying to send out lumpy mail again. That's something that'll never go away. It's just something people forget about. And if you don't know what lumpy mail is, Lumpy, lumpy, it's you get a piece of mail in your mailbox and it's got something in it, right? Like Will Webb, CEO of Lead Strategy, friend of the network here, did a presentation where he spoke about the story of how he sent some cold mail around his local area, and it had dice, and it was talking about some of the things that they had done in the past, their company who he was soliciting, and how it probably didn't go to plan, and the things that they could do. And if you're ready to roll the dice on them and try, contact them here, right? Like, something so simple is so innovative when everyone has forgotten about a lost art. Door to door, face to face, these things are a lost art because everyone is going so hard online. Everyone's going so hard with their AI. Everyone's going so hard with their apps, but people still need connection at the core. So if you want to fight AI, build relationships.
I think that's a great segue to a story from Gallup: the increasing importance of a best friend at work. Have you seen this story yet, Michael?
I have not, but I am excited to hear about Prestige Worldwide. Go ahead.
So recent Gallup data, and just to let everybody know, this was published originally in August 17th of 2022. This is 18 months ago, but this is obviously still very relevant. I came across this listening to someone speak, and they had alluded to this, so I started looking up the research and wanted to find the article that actually suggested that this may be a bigger factor than compensation. So recent Gallup data shows that having a best friend at work has become more important since the start of the P word, even considering the dramatic increase in remote and hybrid work. So having a best friend at work has an even stronger connection to outcomes amid remote working. Gallup has reportedly shown that having best friends at work is key to employee engagement and job success. Gallup data indicates that having a best friend at work is strongly linked to business outcomes, including profitability, safety, inventory control, and retention. Employees who have a best friend at work are significantly more likely to engage customers and internal partners, get more done in less time, support a safe workplace with fewer accidents and reliability concerns, innovate and share ideas, and have fun while at work. Our latest findings show that since the pandemic started, there's been an even stronger relationship between having a best friend and importance of outcomes such as employees' likelihood to return to their workplace if they want to leave the workplace, and their overall satisfaction with the workplace. Sounds like good data to me.
It sounds like this is just more proof that money is not the thing that will make you happy. And it's the relationships in your life that are actually the things that kind of spur your mood from moment to moment and your satisfaction. That's a lot of what I take away when I hear that. What about you, man? What are your thoughts over there as you kind of comb through this? You've certainly, been around quite a bit in this space for years, and you've seen a lot of different places. And so how does that hit your ears?
I was trying to quickly find the book that highlights so many of this from Robin Dunbar. If you guys don't know, that's where Dunbar's number comes from. What's the book? It's called something just like Friends, maybe. But he wrote a whole book on this exact topic that just goes into like literally the findings from him was friends, long-term friends and meaningful relationships was a better predictor of how long somebody would live, your actual health outcomes, than so many other factors. And starting 2020, obviously a lot of us, had to isolate whether we wanted to or not. And I don't know if the world's come out of that yet. Obviously, the more we're online in a virtual world, great. Yeah, you and I are states apart right now, right? Something that we couldn't do otherwise because we're on a screen and we can share this around the globe, which is fantastic. But you still need to have meaningful relationships, whether it's with friends, family, coworkers. Nobody wants to just do work. And if you do, you're probably just a robot. If you show up to work and like can't laugh or have fun, what's the point? I get it, like maybe it's because you have to support your family, you have no other choice. Great. But like this is where people, especially men, right, they go into their midlife crisis, right? Because you go into your 40s, you don't think you've done anything meaningful with your life. Typically at that age, 40s into 50s, especially men, they want to like give back and teach others. And it's like, well, if you've just done the same job your whole life and then aren't sure what you could even teach somebody else, and you don't even understand the world, you have no connection, no meaning, no personal relationships, what do you do? And I think also, something I've come to realize is how important, especially this is again for males, keeping, a group of close friends near you, guys' night out and girls' night out for that matter. Like that needs to be a thing that happens. And I know we all get busy with life, but if you had a weekly meeting with just your guys to go hang out and BS, like that's going to exponentially increase your happiness. And same thing with work. Like if you are a remote worker, again, it's just you and your fam, which is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But at the same time, if that's your experience of life and that's it, and there's no other external factors coming into play besides social media, like that's where most people just get upset and depressed. And it's not because maybe they don't have a great family life, but like you have no other meaningful interaction besides maybe 2 or 3 people and then social media. And so, again, bringing up Run the Block, like for businesses, absolutely. But also like maybe a local club. I don't know. Maybe join a local sport, try and find hobbies, try and find a cooking class, try and join a bowling league. If those still exist, I'm sure they have to, right? Like there's definitely one here where I am. Even as we move into this AI world, which we just covered, for humans as we exist now, we need connection. We need others around us. Like that's why we used to live in tribes. Even in the 1800s, you're still talking about people, around a central city that you would go in and have maybe dinners, or you had to go into the general store, right? You knew everybody. Everyone knew everyone. And that's the joke I actually put in my story yesterday, maybe. I think it's still up. May have just went away. There's a guy on YouTube. I just randomly came across him. and he just like tours the world and like tries to find remote areas and just talk to people. And he has several episodes on Appalachia, specifically around southern West Virginia, Virginia, and Kentucky. And he literally starts off one of the videos like one of his buddies or someone else. He was like, "Yeah, man, the people aren't going to be friendly." And like the very first clip he shows is like him talking to a guy, and the guy's like, "Yeah, that sounds stupid." He's like, "You talk to anybody around here, everyone's super friendly." He's like, no one cares. Everyone's just trying to help each other out. Just hardworking people, just trying to support themselves and their family. And so it's even things like that. Like, it's great that we have a documentary, or we can showcase and highlight other people, but it's the connection of the small town, I think, that we're going to see a lot of people have to go back to. I would imagine most people probably don't know their neighbors at this very moment, unless, you know, they're my mom's age. You know, like I know everybody I knew everyone growing up on my street. I wonder how many people could say the same thing. Like, maybe they know their name because they see them, but like, do you actually know your neighbor? Have you ever had dinner with your neighbor? Do your kids play together ever? I wonder like what that stat actually looks like.
Man. Yeah, more connected than ever, more isolated than ever, right? It's where we seem to be, where we're at the time of extremes, where we're spending more money on fitness and we're fatter than ever, right? This is society and all those things. Yeah, man, this is a tough one. It's so extremely important. And by the way, I did see the story, and I could have a case of mistaken identity, but I think I've seen that guy on Joe Rogan, because I ended up watching the series where he goes into the Appalachians, and it shows like the families that he visits, and he goes back there every so often to check in with them, and he does stuff for them and things like that. I've watched a couple of his documentary episodes on YouTube. Even not analyzing the connectedness, relatedness, friend part of this, it's so extremely important, the type of work that men and women like that do, because they actually give us the insight and look into society and parts of our society as Americans that we may have a pre-existing false belief about. And then it kind of rips that apart. So we see that at the end of the day, we're all human, we're all people, and we're all just trying to get by, every single one of us. And so I just wanted to echo what you said. And also, if you guys haven't seen, and I can't remember the guy's name, but start watching some of the stuff. It's very moving. It's very eye-opening. So there's that. But
I think it's like Peter Santinelli, maybe?
Yeah,
or
it's Peter something.
Yeah.
I think he's like me. He's a black t-shirt, black hat guy most of the time.
I think it's just the way of life. We're still looking for that black t-shirt, the perfect black t-shirt, guys. So if you know, hit us up in DM so we can order some.
If not, we're gonna end up building it for the world, because the world needs the perfect black t-shirt.
I keep getting hit with ads from like Matt and Bo, that company, that's saying we've solved the perfect t-shirt problem. So maybe that's part of the AI generated ads. It's listening to me and you complain. It's like, hey, here's your specific ad generated right around your problem that you're complaining about.
Absolutely. Touching back on the topic at hand, and this is something that I find myself more and more frequently speaking about, so I'll make it quick, but self-determination theory. Every human needs three things, right? We need a sense of competence. We call that a path to mastery. Every single person needs something that they can pour themselves into, that you can progress your skills, that will lead you to a better version of yourself. We all need that thing. It doesn't matter if it's shooting a basketball. It doesn't matter if it's whittling wood. It doesn't matter if it's wiring houses. We all need that thing, right? Something else that we all need is a sense of relatedness. And that's what we're talking about now. We are very social creatures, extremely. We evolved in tribes, right? And so when we're isolated, when we're cut off, it breaks us down. You use the P word as the start. Look at everyone. I'd encourage you to go look at the data of substance abuse, sexual abuse, domestic violence, suicide, all of those things, depression, all of them, right? the corollary is there. We got isolated and things got bad. And then the third thing we need is a sense of autonomy. That's called freedom. A vote in your own life on what you do on a daily basis. And whenever any of those three things are broken, are withheld, a human will have functional issues to the level that they're withheld. This is why solitary confinement for people who are incarcerated, like, it is mental torture. And so, I'm not going to make it about that, but it's just an example of how isolation is used. And so it's extremely obvious, I think, that because a workplace is work, right? And work is a thing we don't want to do. We all have things that we love to do within our job, but then there are certain things that you may not enjoy, and you have to do this thing, right? It's what puts food on the table. It's what keeps the lights on. Okay, cool. Don't you think it would be a lot more fulfilling if you enjoyed the company of a person that you are with on a daily basis, that it gives you someone to confide in, it gives you someone to run the race with? And if you don't have this, and now you're in a setting where you don't enjoy your circumstance, you don't enjoy your surroundings, and you don't enjoy your company, it's really easy to see how there's not an amount of money in the world that's going to make that existence on a day-to-day basis worthwhile. So look for those three things. Look for a sense of relatedness, look for a path to mastery, and look for freedom, and you'll find what you're looking for. But as you're making your assessments of things, when you see any of those three things broken, it's a matter of time until something goes haywire.
There's a reason why the I in Rich is innovation, collaboration, creativity. Those spark from conversations. Now, if you go for a walk in isolation, can you have a great idea? Absolutely. But odds are you've probably had way better output when you're going through those beginning stages, if you can bounce ideas off of somebody, right? Especially if somebody's been there before, done that thing before, to help steer you a little bit. And so in isolation, we either think we've come up with the world's best idea or the world's worst idea. More than likely, it's probably somewhere in the middle. But that's the other piece, especially, of remote work. I love it that we can go anywhere at any time and I can work. That's fantastic. I also can't stand it that I've got to send tons of emails and messages and Slacks, that if we were in an office, I could just walk over to the next desk and be like, hey, is that thing done? Or like, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think? Instead, I've got to send an email or a Slack and tag the person and then wait 4 to 24 hours to see their response. And then by then, like, if I haven't made a note myself, I'm like, I don't remember what I was talking about. Like, I was in the zone at that time, right? So I wonder what the opportunity cost is of some of that too versus anything else. I feel like we definitely should do. So we got AI on the docket and friends on the docket. I know we have a hard cutoff here in a few. So I do want to cover the Neil Patel story real quick. And then we started off with Facebook and how they're going down this AI rabbit hole. And I thought it was interesting. This is an article from Social Media Today, that there was a conference last week with the CEO of Instagram, Adam, I think it's Mosseri, and he was answering questions about the platform. And we've seen them shift, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. And he shared a slide, which if you go to Social Media Today and look up the Instagram story, you'll find it. On the what can help distribution, you have drive authentic engagement, consider when your audience is online, upload highest resolution, which is a shift away from what they have said before, and post your content at the same time as other platforms, which is interesting as well. Why would it matter if you're posting on other platforms? Then what can hurt your distribution? Engagement, bait, reels over 90 seconds, which is a complete shift from what they said before. Videos with third-party watermarks, which they specifically mean TikTok. Low quality videos, and posting content you didn't make. Part of this is just like, do they even know what they're doing? Because this is the third or fourth time they've completely flip-flopped what they're saying is working or not working. Or are they just literally, beholden to Mother AI as well? And they're like, well, now this isn't working, so now it's this thing. I hope it's, honestly, I don't want to say I hope, because this sounds like, very dystopian. I just imagine, Mr. Massery walking into his office, and it's just like an AI. The AI is actually behind the desk, and like, here are your tablets for the next quarter on what's working and what's not working according to our data. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, we're already
they
there.
just literally like, it's just data, and they're like, okay, this is now what you need to do, and so you're just constantly like, I can't imagine if I had a business that solely was like, I'm producing content quotes for people to consume, and that's my business. That's it. I'm just making videos, and there's no other touch points I have with the world. I would probably just go insane. What else would you do?
Well, that's the isolation part we were talking. Yeah, it's a complete 180 again. Even they're leaning into just being TikTok even more, right? That's essentially what we're looking at. I'm not opposed to the not your content thing, and the reason why is because one of the mainstays of content, especially on Instagram, especially on Reels, has been reaction videos, right? You're reacting to something else that someone created. You're not doing anything. You're not creating content. You're taking from someone else. It doesn't matter if you agree with them or not. It doesn't matter if they're right or not, right? And so, like, I've made a public statement many times. I feel that if you do a reaction video to someone trashing them, they should be able to show up at your house and challenge you. Because the world would be a better place if we weren't constantly reacting to other people's things, tearing them down, right? It just leads to other shenanigans. So I love it for that aspect. The upload the highest resolution, go into hi-fi content, make it the highest possible quality. Sounds like they're almost differentiating to cut out like 95% of the people on the platform who don't have the ability to outsource to professionals who understand the exact way to do these things. Because if they're going to go to the highest possible quality and you have someone who just wants to, produce content for their friends, family, just hang out on there, now they're going to be disincentivized to do this because they're not going to get any engagement. They're not going to get any visibility. And what do people do when they don't get a return for their effort? They just quit. And so I think overall, this is going to be a really bad thing. I think it's going to discourage people from creating content.
I think they're really trying to hammer home the repurposing from TikTok. I think they can't stand that. But it's weird that they say post the same time as you post on other platforms. How would they know that? Unless you're using like the Meta business scheduler, which I don't think most people do. You're using third-party schedulers like Later or something like that. Sprout Social, things like that. Hootsuite, that's what I was trying to think of. I don't know, again, where in what world, I guess they know those things. They have to know those things. So I know from using Later, if we want to do like a collaboration post, we can't schedule those out. I can schedule anything other than collaboration posts or stories. So I just think it's weird. You have this the same company essentially saying two different things. And this is why, like I said, the comment earlier, I wish Instagram had never sold out and that they had, stayed true to their original mission and goal instead of taking the money. I get it though. Take the money and run. Do what you got to do. If they were going to make a competitor, all those things, I get it. But it's just like, it's two completely different things, it feels like, and two completely different audiences. That's just going to be almost the same thing eventually. Because I believe it was last year around this time, there was a viral video from the CEO, Adam, and he was telling you like what works and what doesn't work, which everyone thought was really weird because they had never said this before. And then he comes out and says, what you can do. And it feels some of this is the same, and then others is complete 180 now. And so, again, I don't know where this goes because TikTok could be banned soon, within the next year or so. So is it because of that? We also didn't get a cover. I know we got a bounce. So there are a few other things that I wanted to cover. So this wasn't clickbait. I promise, guys, we were going to cover this the next time we record, which will probably be in a day or two. I wanted to get into the tiered for businesses that they're thinking about rolling out, which could be good or bad. I want to get into the Neil Patel story and a few other things. I think what's going to have to happen for anyone that's like, well, what do I do now? Like, I don't know what to post, what to do. I think you and I are probably in agreement that you've got to do whatever it is that you're comfortable doing. If it's written, great. If it's video, great. If it's spoken like a podcast, great. You need to start there and something that you can consistently do and build. And before AI completely takes over, there's no better time than now to start posting if you haven't at all and you want a business or you have a business before it completely takes over. And the initial stages will probably be very beneficial and helpful. They'll be like, hey, here's some AI tips about how to improve your post or something like that. It'll definitely start from a beneficial standpoint until it's all just taken over. So I would absolutely tell you that you need to start posting. You need to start telling your stories. If you have a service, you need to start showcasing what you can do. If you've not worked with anybody, you need to go out and ask 2 to 3 people to work for free, get them some proof, and you need to document it and get it out there. And then ultimately pay attention to sites like social media today that kind of update you on like the breaking stories, because this stuff changes all the time. You and I sit there and laugh at each other because like we'll screenshot like, yeah, did you see this today? Oh, did you see that? And it can become maddening. And then you get stuck in that overwhelm and underperform cycle where you're like, well, screw it. It doesn't matter anyways, because tomorrow they're going to change everything. Yeah, maybe. But the more you can build your own audience, and hate to use the word, but be authentic, the more you can build your own audience and just share stories and your message, your message is your mission, something that, you've said a bunch. The more you can do those types of things, regardless of the platform, you're going to be way better off. And you'll start building an audience, and your audience will share that, whether it's via DM or it's via, copy paste, or it's even screenshot. Hey, did you see this person do this thing? Right? And the more we can do that as owners, business owners, partners, or collaborators, the better off you're going to be.
Sounds like you just said get to work.
Just the classic way to end this. All right, guys, we will be back next time. We're going to cover, Michael had a great story that I want to get to about content. We also had a couple questions that we didn't get to that I definitely want to cover. So we'll kick off next time and get right to it with those types of things. Other than that, if you guys have questions that you would like us to cover, hit Michael up, Michael_Anthony_82 on Instagram. I am cam.explains on Instagram. Hit us up. Just send us a question. Say, hey, listen to the podcast. Have a couple questions and just shoot them over. And then we'll let you know on what episode we're going to answer those. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will talk to you soon.
See you.